Welcome everyone. It's an absolute delight to see you all here. And what we'd like to do is really start by talking a little bit about what we're going to cover tonight. So I'm Paul Hannam, I'm co-chair of Greening Steyning, and I'm going to be your host tonight and also introduce the speakers. And we have some great speakers tonight. We have Isabella Tree from the Knepp Estate. We have Andrew Griffith, our MP, plus 12 or so local residents who are working hard to create the community that we want and that the planet needs. Now, we already have about 230 people who've signed up for tonight, and I think we've got 150 people joined us now. So it's great, and we're going to have a lot more people joining us. But what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about Greening Steyning, because some of you might not know about us. So despite the name, we actually cover Steyning, Bramber and Upper Beeding and the surrounding area. And we really want to tackle the big environmental problems, but we're also committed to protecting our local nature, to making our roads safer, to encouraging walking and cycling, reducing waste, cutting our energy costs and making our community an even better place to live. We started about 10 years ago, and despite the lockdown, we've grown from 700 to over 1,000 supporters in the last year, which shows the real enthusiasm and interest in our community about these issues. And we have about 70 active volunteers. Now, whether you're a keen gardener, a nature lover, a bird watcher, a rambler, whether you're interested in electric cars, cutting your energy costs, or green jobs for yourself or your children, or whether you're somebody who's moved and inspired by David Attenborough documentaries or the many news stories about the environment, you can join us and take action to avert the climate and ecological crisis that we're all facing. Joining Greening Steyning is an opportunity to work with like-minded people, to make new friends and have fun while contributing to making our community one of the greenest, healthiest and happiest in the UK. And on a personal note, I've worked in the environmental sector for nearly 25 years, but I've never got involved in the local community until now. I moved to Bramber just over 2 years ago, and I have to say it's been one of the best experiences of my life. Working with the people you'll meet has been wonderful, and I really know that we're building something magnificent here. And at the end of our event, we're going to tell you more about future events and how you can join us. So tonight's event is called Countdown to 2030 for a reason. According to the IPCC, who are the international body of leading climate scientists, if we're going to avert dangerous climate breakdown, we need to cut emissions in half by 2030 and hit net zero by the middle of the century. Unlike the pandemic, we know climate change is coming and we know it's going to get a lot worse. Scientists can predict pretty accurately what's going to be happening, and we've really got no excuses for not taking action. And a phrase that was developed by Yale University, who studied the best phrase to really sum up climate change in 10 words, was this: it's real, it's us, it's bad, scientists agree, and there's hope. And tonight is all about the hope. We want to focus on what we can do. And our 2030 project and campaign is all about how we can cut our emissions by half by 2030 so that we can meet the IPCC goals, but at the same time ensuring that we can still enjoy a good life too. So please remember this goal throughout this evening: cut carbon emissions by half by 2030 and ensure we can still enjoy the good life. And over the next hour or so, you'll learn about what this really means and how we can enjoy this good life and improve our physical and mental well-being while still tackling these issues. We're going to be talking to Isabella Tree from the world famous Knepp Estate about rewilding and how we can protect nature. We'll be talking to our MP Andrew Griffith about what the government's doing about COP26, which is going to be the biggest summit we've ever had in Britain, and Andrew's personal commitment to the environment. We're going to hear from our action group leaders, from Dawn, Jeff, Ronnie and Alex, who will be speaking about local projects in transport, energy, biodiversity and lifestyle. And you'll be hearing from our candidates for the County Council about where they stand on green issues. And we'll be hearing from a number of members of our community, business owners, shop owners, students and residents just like you and I. And we also believe that there's a real need and a real desire for change now. Last summer, we did a survey of about 500 local people, and the majority said that they didn't want to go back to normal. And this is mirrored across Britain and across the world. There's a real thirst for change, because I think the pandemic has enabled each one of us to really pause and reflect on what matters most in our lives. You and I have the chance to imagine how amazing our life could be if we continue to all work together beyond the pandemic. If we can just maintain our community spirit, our compassion for our neighbours, for the vulnerable, and our appreciation of nature that so many of us experienced in the last 12 months, I think we can really achieve something truly remarkable here in our beautiful corner of Sussex. So let's get started with our first speaker. We're very fortunate to welcome Isabella Tree. Isabella runs the Knepp Estate with her husband, conservationist Charlie Burrell, and she's the author of Rewilding, The Return of Nature to a British Farm. So we look forward to speaking with you. And Isabella, and please turn to gallery view if you want, to speaker view rather, if you want to see the speakers as they come up. So Isabella, are you there? You unmuted?
I'm unmuted, yes.
There you are, welcome. Very delighted to have you there, to welcome you tonight. How are you?
Good, thanks, very good.
Excellent. Well, I think most people here know the Knepp Estate, and many of us have had the pleasure of going there. But before we talk about it, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how you got interested in nature and the environment.
Well, I mean, the ironic thing, I suppose, is that both Charlie and I always thought that we were interested in nature. But we used to travel the ends of the earth to go and find it. We never once thought that we could have it in our own backyard. And it wasn't really until we had to face the hard fact that farming on our very heavy clay soil here wasn't working, and we were hugely in debt, and the prospects were looking bleaker and bleaker all the time. It took us 17 years to realize that the Sussex clay had beaten us, and that we finally drew a line underneath conventional farming on this land and realized we wanted to do something else, working with the land rather than battling against it all the time. And that's when we hit upon the idea of rewilding, partly influenced by wonderful people like Tony Whitbread, who's here this evening, and also ecologists on the continent like Franz Vera, all of whom are thinking about landscape scale restoration and how you can get nature back actually very quickly if you put the right drivers in place. So it's a bit like trying to pull a glider back up into the sky so it can fly again. If you just walk away from land and leave it, not much will happen for a very long time. It may get covered in scrub and maybe trees will grow up, but for biodiversity, for the excitement of wildlife, you really need things messing things up a bit. So we released free roaming animals into the area, 3,500 acres. Really to act as proxies of the huge herds of animals that would have been here in the past. So we've got Old English Longhorn doing a very good impression of aurochs, Exmoor ponies acting as tarpan, and Tamworth pigs being wild boar, and then we've got fallow deer and red deer. And the way they disturb the land, the way they browse and graze, the way they shift nutrients from one place to another, the way they dung in a certain place and eat herbs and plants in another, they transport seeds around the landscape. All that is incredibly dynamic, and it produces a kaleidoscope of habitats, which means that wildlife just rockets.
What surprised you most? What's been the most interesting thing you found since you started this project?
It's impossible to say, because I mean, every week there's something extraordinary and exciting that happens. I suppose it was the speed perhaps at which it happened, which is still something that I think buoys us up with hope, because it's been less than 20 years since we started the project. Only about 5 years in, we were seeing nightingales here breeding. About 7 years in, we were seeing turtle doves, one of our most endangered species in Britain. We've now got all 5 UK species of owl, 13 out of the 18 UK species of bats. Almost every week, somebody comes along and discovers a new beetle or we had a fly that was new to Britain a few months ago. So it's endlessly exciting.
Wow, that's incredible. And what exciting plans have you got next? Any coming attractions we should know about?
Well, in Charlie's rather ambitious letter of intent to the government at the start of this project in the year 2000, he said that he would like to have, he was going to create a wilderness area in West Sussex, and some of the drivers of the project were going to be bison, beavers, and wild boar. We can't release wild boar because it's against the Dangerous Animals Act, but if they make it onto our land of their own accord, and who knows, they might get here from East Sussex somehow, hopefully enticed by the scent of our delightful Tamworth pigs, that would be a box ticked. Bison might be a little way down the road, although Kent Wildlife Trust have beaten us to it. But beavers, we did have a good shot at last year. In fact, one of them was named Bramber, because he escaped within about 10 days and ended up at Bramber, having crossed about 20 weirs. We eventually had to catch him up again. We are going to try again with beavers, shifting our kind of approach a bit, because we're one of the only sites in Britain that doesn't have to have an actual enclosure. Our license is a bit more relaxed. So we've got to work out how to keep the beavers on Knepp, at least for a while.
Oh, wow. Now, and as we're talking, by the way, please add any questions into chat. And if you put a big Q next to it, and then we'll have some questions for Isabella at the end of the talk and for all our speakers. Now, I know you said you're writing a handbook at the moment for publication. And now my garden is a complete wilderness, but that's more through incompetence rather than design. But what advice would you give to people in terms of, rewilding? What can we learn from what you're doing in our gardens?
Well, doing nothing is actually often a very good thing. It's quite difficult for a lot of human beings, myself included, to let go. And I think that's what rewilding is all about. It's letting nature perform, letting natural processes happen. And the reason that Charlie and I are writing the Wilding Handbook is really because of the amazing response we had to the book Wilding, but also the estate, what's happened here. It really, I think, galvanizes people and makes people feel that they can do something positive, no matter how small the space. And I think it's mostly about going organic, so no chemicals on your patch. It's about doing things like not mowing your lawn so much, getting messy, allowing untidy patches of brambles and nettles to be in places where you don't particularly mind them. Just letting go, letting the hands off the steering wheel a bit, allowing predators to come into your cabbage patch to take control of the whitefly or the caterpillars, just to allow nature a little bit of time to respond to pests, that sort of thing. You can take a lot of lessons from the big landscape and shrink it down to scale, but also to connect. And I think if you can connect with your neighbors, then you really do start to have interesting processes happening.
All right. So tell me about the work you're doing. I know you're very opposed to the Buck Barn development. And would you like to tell us a bit about that? This is something which will affect many people locally as well.
Yes, I think this is really about the big picture here. We've got two kind of influences at government at the moment. One is the build, 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 which is partly driven by housing need, and no one would deny that. But it is also partly driven by the government wanting to kickstart the economy again. So it is also about money. And then we have the government wanting to restore nature, and its laudable environment bill, which we hope will be passed before November, before the COP26 conference you were talking about. And that's the government there is saying that we really need to connect nature together. We can't have these isolated pockets of nature anymore. We have to restore greenfield sites so that they continue sequestering carbon, but actually improve them so that we can help mitigate climate change. And we've got to do something about biodiversity networks, new nature networks. And this site at Buck Barn was actually identified by Sussex Wildlife Trust as being of high nature value. And it's in its draft Nature Network Recovery Plan, which all local councils are going to need to do underneath the Environment Bill, as being a way of connecting Knepp with areas like St Leonard's Forest and Ashdown Forest, so that species can move again, they can be resilient in the face of rising temperatures, and they can meet other populations in order to increase their genetic diversity. So hugely important for loads of reasons. And that site is simply nuts to have housing on. It's nowhere near it's nowhere near transport, it's nowhere near a railway station. It would double, I mean, everybody, 10,000 people each having, families having cars, it would pollute the River Ada as well. It would destroy the flood mitigation ability of that land. It's wrong for a million reasons. And I think we just have to make it absolutely plain to government that they've got to adhere to their own pledge to build the right houses in the right places. And they've got to live up to their pledge to ensure that we have recovery of nature in the country.
Thanks, some very good points then. Another thing about Greening Steyning is, we want to work together to make sure that either these developments don't go ahead or that they are, they meet the standards, ecological standards. So let's take a question from the audience. We've got a question here. What action needs to be taken to prevent zoonotic diseases such as COVID-19 or Ebola?
You're asking me?
I can ask you another one.
Maybe not my forte, that one.
Okay, let me ask another one. What could local farmers and landowners do to support the Knepp project? There you go.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. And it really is to join us. We're already in discussion with landowners and farmers all around us, in fact, to try and think about how we can create these nature networks. So not necessarily devoting your entire amount of land if you're a farmer or a landowner, but even a tiny patch can become part of a nature corridor. And we already have signed a memorandum of understanding with landowners to the south of us all the way to Climping, so to the Climping Gap. And that would be really exciting because we'd be joining up a terrestrial corridor with the kelp forest marine reserve off the coast, and then connecting through Knepp back up northwards towards St Leonard's and Ashdown Forest. So it's really join our discussion and see how we can all connect together to make this fantastic webbing for nature throughout our landscape. We could be a pilot project for the country. It would be really exciting.
No, that sounds fantastic. That is very exciting. And one more question from the audience. How is the dry, cold weather affecting your farm at the moment or your estate?
Well, it's not a farm anymore. So no. if we were farming in the bad old days, we would be tearing our hair out, I think, with another year of drought. But what's amazing is because our soils have restored, we're seeing much less cracking. In the old days, you could literally put your arm up to your shoulder down the cracks that would appear in our land. That doesn't happen anymore. And the animals seem to survive perfectly well on browse as much as graze. So they seem to be in very good condition. They've come through the weather very well, the winter very well. There's plenty of water out there now that it's sitting on our lovely heavy clay. So we don't worry about the weather these days anymore, which is a wonderful thing about rewilding. It's one thing we can relax about.
And to finish, what would you say as advice to people maybe they're coming to their first event tonight, and a special welcome to people who it is their first event, about joining a group like us or getting involved in the environment? What advice would you give? Well,
I think one of the things I've noticed, I think, throughout the pandemic is that sometimes the eco-anxiety can be overwhelming. We have terrible headlines all the time, and what can we do about it? But I think just the actual act of restoring a little patch of land, a window box, and seeing butterflies making use of whatever you're doing there, or insects returning and soil restoring, that is a window onto the restoration of the world. And I think that that's what's happening, I think, when you join something like Greening Steyning. It is not being alone in a world of wounds, which is what Aldo Leopold, the great father of rewilding in the States, said about an ecological education. It is being with like-minded people who want to heal the planet too.
It's a beautiful way to end. Thank you so much, Isabella. We really appreciate you coming and telling us about Knepp Estate and your work. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Excellent. So, Jeff, I'm now going to introduce Jeff Barnett, who's my co-chair with me here at Greening Steyning, and also in charge of the Home and Energy Group. So, Jeff, if you'd like to tell me a bit about maybe how you got involved in Greening Steyning, and also how you set it up, really, because you were the main mover 10 years ago.
Well, it feels like a long time ago, but the starting point for me was a film, The Age of Stupid. I don't know how many people in the audience tonight saw it, but it was a low-budget campaigning film set in this dystopian future where the whole world had been ravaged by climate change. And it was looking back at the present day and asking the question, how could people have been so stupid to have not done something about climate change while they had the chance? And I have to say, it really grabbed me, and it made me think we shouldn't be waiting for somebody else to fix the problem. We need to do something about it right here ourselves in Steyning. So the first step was I organised a showing of the film at the Steyning Centre back in 2009. And we got a really good crowd. And after the film, I asked people to put their hands up, if they'd be interested in meeting up later to talk about setting up a local climate group. And a few dozen hands went up. And early the next year, we had our very first meeting. And it was really reassuring to discover I wasn't alone. Yeah. A lot of people, many of whom I'd not met before, but are now firm friends, felt the very same way about climate change. And these people form the nucleus of the group that has grown steadily ever since. So that, as you were saying, we now have over 1,000 on the mailing list. But we've had a big boost recently after we ran that 2030 vision survey last summer, which has given us a lot of new momentum and allowed us to really raise our ambitions. So we now have 2030, as you were saying, as our big target to get things done by, or as we're calling it, the 2030 project.
So, Jeff, you're now doing Homes and Energy Group. You're the coordinator for that. So can you tell me a bit about what the group does and what's your vision for where we have to be by 2030?
Sure. Well, I think the vision is pretty clear. By 2030, Steyning, Bramber and Beeding should be aiming to be self-sufficient in generating our own green renewable energy. In fact, there's no real reason why we shouldn't be a net energy exporter. And I think the good news is that this is eminently achievable. We just have to, most of us with a suitable roof just has to put on solar panels, and we need to get serious about insulating our homes and installing low carbon heating systems like heat pumps. We could do this.
Absolutely. And if anybody has any questions specifically around energy and home, please put them in chat with a big capital Q next to them. And how do you think you're going to make that vision a reality, Jeff? What are some of the actions you're taking?
Well, we don't have a magic wand to wave to make this happen. So I think our main tactic is to provide clear and trustworthy information and to offer active encouragement. I think people often need a nudge to get on with home energy improvements, rather than putting it off for another year. And I'm sure plenty of people in the audience will know the feeling that it's something they've been meaning to do for ages. But we've learned that one of the best in the last 10 years, one of the best catalysts for this is the demonstration effect of seeing what your neighbors are doing. So if those of you on the call tonight could get started in doing things, you'll probably find there's a ripple effect that goes all around your neighborhood.
And what project are you particularly excited about or interested in? Is there one that really stands out for you?
Well, there's a couple of things we're working on. We've already started building an information bank on the website on where to get started in improving energy efficiency in the home. So, for example, there's a really nice little case study, video case study done by Martin Phillips on his experience of installing a heat pump. And there'll be more of this kind of thing to come. Next Saturday, we're at the farmers market with our demonstration doll's house, which is designed to get conversations started. So come and see us there, and let's have a chat about your house. But we've also done a really kind of cool short video designed to get people thinking, called "How Green Is My Street?" And this uses government data on EPC ratings of houses to rank streets from the greenest to the least green. And there's a huge difference. And I urge you to really take a look at this, because it just shows how much work there is to do here. But looking ahead, one thing we'd love to do is set up a community energy project, putting solar panels on some schools or public buildings, or maybe even creating a small solar farm that people could buy into. So if anybody here is interested in getting involved in any of these, then we'd love you to sort of join with our Homes Energy Action Group.
Great. We've got a few questions from the audience, and here's one. Can small terrace homes have heat pumps, or are they just for landowners or big gardens?
That's a good question. You do need to have a spot to put the actual main outdoor unit. And we're thinking about getting one in our house, and it is a bit of a squeeze. But I think you can be creative in where you put it, but you do need to have a bit of outdoor space. It's about, they're about a kind of 1 metre by 1 metre for a normal size house. So they're not tiny.
And what about people living in very old houses, even medieval homes? What can they do to contribute to the sort of green energy project?
Well, I think if you really are living in a historic home, like quite a number of people in Steyning are, I think your options are more limited. But I think you can think about, certainly think about a heat pump. You can think about wood stoves. You can do what you can in insulation. But there are risks involved with older properties, so you need to get really good advice, I think, is the main thing. But if you can't do a great deal on your house, then you can do a great deal on other parts of your lifestyle, like your flying behavior or your eating behavior and your driving behavior. So it's the whole picture you need to be thinking of. Definitely.
And we've had one question asking for any opportunities for volunteers. Absolutely. And right at the end, we'll be giving you a link so you can register that interest with us. Yeah. So that's great.
Fantastic.
Sorry? Yeah.
No, fantastic. The more volunteers, the better.
We've got some comments there, but Jeff, that was great. Thank you very much indeed. And any questions for Jeff, we can come back later on. So that's great. Now, one of the most important groups, perhaps the most important group that we mustn't overlook in the environment is young people. For they're our future. They're going to have to live on the planet that we're going to leave for them. And tonight we're very fortunate to welcome Michael Shirley, who leads the Eco Council at Steyning Grammar. And he's going to give us a perspective from a teenager view about climate change and about the issues that we've been talking about. So, Michael, would you like to unmute and join us?
Thank you, Paul.
Welcome, very good to have you here. So, tell me a bit about what your interest in the environment, what really got you involved in this, Michael?
So, I've always been really passionate about the climate and the environment. I think one of the things, taking it back right to the beginning, is some of the images which we see in the news of wildfires, of flooding, of animals dying, of plastic pollution. I think is something which really gets people involved from a young age. And there's really emotive images which bring climate change to life and make it feel like a real thing which is happening right now. So after seeing many of those images, we set up the Eco Council at SGS, at Steyning Grammar School. I was in year 10 at the time and I co-founded it with another student. And we had an initial focus on energy usage at SGS. And energy actually accounts for about 80% of global emissions. And so that's something which is super important to be reducing, and particularly the energy wastage, which we see with lights being left on in empty classrooms, with lights being left on at break and lunchtime, with computers being left on. That's something we've really been targeting, and that was one of our initial focuses. As well as that, of course, we've been trying to get more students involved in the climate movement. I think Isabella spoke earlier about having a group of like-minded people, and the Eco Council provides that at SGS. Just be able to have a group of students who are passionate about the same thing, have a shared cause, a shared purpose, trying to tackle climate change is really important, I think, for students, and a great thing which we're doing at SGS.
And what about 2030? What's your vision for 2030? What should we really be aiming to do, do you think?
I think obviously 2030 is the ultimate deadline which our planet faces. And so it's a really important target which climate scientists are talking about right now. I think that means we all have responsibility to tackle climate change and to be focusing on a multitude of different topics and areas which we can realistically impact on and improve ourselves on. So at school, for example, we're looking into biodiversity, recycling, energy, as I've spoken about, reducing plastic pollution and reducing litter, which are areas which I think are really palpable areas which we can change at SGS and really be able to reduce that litter, to reduce that energy consumption, to reduce that plastic wastage as well.
And what do you think matters most to young people as they think about the impending, what we call climate breakdown, because it's much more than climate change. Climate change can be benign. Climate breakdown is what's really happening. How do you think young people really feel about this?
I think, of course, as I spoke about earlier, young people see the images which we see on the news, and as well, just discussions which I have at school and discussions which we've had in the Eco Council and in the school council as well. Students are really passionate, I think, about 3 main topic areas. So if I just break them down, the first of us is recycling.
Oh, we lost you. You there, Michael? No, I think we've lost you. Okay.
Animals dying, as we spoke about those images previously, I think is something which really brings to light climate change. And so a lot of students talk really passionately about the plastic which we need to reduce.
Okay, brilliant. If you have any questions specifically for Michael, please put them in chat. Is there anything else you'd like to add that you think is important for people maybe coming for the first time in particular who've not been involved in environmental campaigns? You know, what do you think is really the key here?
I think definitely being in a group of like-minded people, being able to talk about ideas, being able to talk about actions and impacts which we can make, and looking at that really positive side in that, yes, climate change is real, and yes, it's going to be a huge challenge, but we need to face up to that, and we can face up to that. There is hope if we all take action now. Our motto at school in our Eco Council is that we all have the power today to transform tomorrow by making simple lifestyle choices. And if we do that, if we change our lifestyles, then we really can transform the future.
Very inspiring, thank you. Now, you did actually freeze for about 30 seconds there, and this happens on every Zoom call. So you said there were 3 things. Recycling was one we heard, but what were the other 2, Michael? Do you remember?
Yes. So sorry about that. So the second
it's not your fault.
was biodiversity. Planting wildflowers, planting trees. It's a great thing which students are able to do, a hands-on activity to get students involved in climate change and right up close to the environment and our natural world. The third was plastic pollution. As I've mentioned earlier, the images which we see of animals dying is something which students talk about really passionately, and young people, I think, are really engaged in the plastic pollution idea. And I think one of the main things that students connotate with plastic pollution, with climate change, is plastic pollution. And so we're really looking at reducing that.
Brilliant. Michael, thank you so much. You have inspired us all. We really appreciate you coming, and good luck with all your work. And we'll be working closely for our education work. And, you know, it's an absolute pleasure to have you at our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dawn, would you like to join us, Dawn? If you unmute.
Yep. Hi.
There you go. And I'd like to welcome Dawn Daniel, who's our coordinator for the Transport Group. And Dawn, do you want to start by telling us a bit about the group and what your vision is for 2030?
Okay, well, the Transport Group's vision for 2030 is very much about, obviously, sustainable low carbon transport for our community, but it's also very much about having healthier, safer, and more enjoyable travel for our community as well. So that really involves having less vehicles on the road. And that's quite a big involve quite a big cultural shift, because we're all very reliant on our cars, especially living in a place like Steyning, Beeding and Bramber, where it's not so easy to get to certain places without a car. So the first part of our vision is that we have a much more efficient, reliable and affordable public transport system with regular buses that are really well linked to other bus routes, towns, and of course our rail network at Shoreham. And the next part is more active travel, so more walking and cycling wherever possible. We have the link, the Downs link and the route to Shoreham, but wouldn't it be great if we could have good off-road cycle routes that take us to all the other local towns in our near our community, and that really are well maintained and easily accessible for everyone. With walking, it would be brilliant if people can walk around all of our streets easily on the pavements, whether you've got a wheelchair, you're pushing a buggy, you've got a motorized scooter. It would be lovely if everyone could get around easily and access the countryside easily too. At the moment, we have quite a lot of rickety old styles and footpaths out into the countryside that aren't brilliantly maintained. And I know some people find it quite difficult to walk into the countryside. So we'd like to see easy kissing gate style access to various footpaths and well-maintained footpaths and for walkers. The other thing I think we would really like to have in 2030 is for all our school children to be able to sit at school independently as far as possible, and for parents to feel safe about them going to school on their own, particularly with the Steyning Grammar School now having the different campuses. So we would love in 2030 for there to be a brilliant cycle route and footpath that crosses the A283 that is completely safe and easy, making it really easy for students to travel independently to school and for our primary school children as well. If cyclists are going on the roads, we want our roads to be calmer so that cyclists feel they can travel on the roads and not worry about the flow of traffic or being squeezed over. That would be great too. And for that to happen, we want to develop this kind of culture that roads are not just about vehicles, they are a shared space for everyone. And the last thing is our high streets. I think we all want to support our high streets. We want to see them thrive, not only through everyone supporting our local shops and businesses, but it would be great if they could be a place that people could come and relax. So there were benches there for older people who found it hard to walk longer distance, so they could come to the shops, sit and rest for a bit. More al fresco eating, maybe it would be to have a pedestrianised section, places where it would be easy to ride your bike into town, park your bike and leave it safely. Obviously, we still want to have, there will be some people who still need to use a car, but the car wouldn't dominate the high street. It would be, there would be spaces for those people who really need them, and there would be plenty of other spaces for walkers, cyclists, people just to enjoy themselves.
Okay, great. Is there a particular project, Dawn, that you're most excited about, you want to tell us about?
Okay, well, all of our projects at the moment are first steps. They're all practical first steps, but they are all about cultural and behavioural changes as well. So the first one, 20's Plenty, hopefully you've all heard about that and you've all had the survey posted through your door, or you've done it online. The survey's been very successful so far in that we've had, I think it's about 1,100 responses now. For those of you who haven't completed it, you've got 3 more days. I think we close on the 30th. So please do. We'd like to hear what you think. So the aim of the 20's Plenty is obviously to calm the roads. The traffic's going slower. That makes the road safer and healthier for everyone. There's lots of evidence to show that if cars are going 20 miles per hour, people do actually travel more actively because cyclists feel safer, walkers feel safer. So we really want to, we'd like to have 20's Plenty so that we can encourage more active travel and make our roads safer and healthier. And that also sends out the signal as well, is part of this cultural change that roads are shared spaces. They're not just the drivers of vehicles. The other project that I think is a really good one, Alan in our group has put together a proposal for a grant to get some bike stations in Bramber and in Beeding. So not only will that provide places, and we'll need lots more, but not only will that provide places for people to park their bikes, but There'd be repair kits there so people can do minor repairs. And again, this is about sending out a signal to the community that cyclists are welcome here and cyclists are valued. And yeah, so those are 2 projects at the moment that I'm excited about.
And Dawn, you joined Greening Steyning just over a year ago. What's it been like? You know, what's it been as an experience being part of Greening Steyning for you?
Well, when I first joined, I have to say, I mean, I was very inspired by the whole idea of a community having a vision and aiming to make these big changes by 2030. I thought that was brilliant. But I was a little bit anxious because I wasn't quite sure whether I was green enough and whether my lifestyle was green enough, whether I'd read enough green books. And then when I joined the transport group, I'm a really keen cyclist and walker, but I'm no expert on transport. So I was a little bit worried about that, and what I could contribute. But I found the group to be really welcoming. People come to it with different knowledge and skills, and we all share, all learning from each other. And most of all, we're all figuring out what is the best way that we can engage our community and achieve our vision. So I've learned a lot from lots of other people. And not only that, during the last year, whilst we've had COVID, it's quite hard because most of our meetings have been on Zoom, but I have managed to make some really good friends in the group as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to face-to-face again.
No, well, we absolutely, and we will be meeting face-to-face again very soon. Having groups of 30, I think, from May, and we'll talk about that more later. But I think, Dawn, also, you raised a very important point here, that we welcome literally everyone, whatever your experience, whatever your background, whatever your skills, education, it's totally irrelevant, because what we're talking about with the climate and ecology affects every human being on this planet, and we need as many people as possible to join, and you'll be very welcome, whatever your experience. So thank you. So we've got quite a few questions, in fact, a lot of questions coming in. First one, Dawn, is what about electric car charging stations? Now, I'm going to buy an electric car in the next few weeks. So I want to know about this.
Yeah, that is part of our, can you hear me? That is part of our vision too, to have those. But I guess we thrash out our vision for now based on the things that we feel we can most readily achieve. But that is also part of the vision, that, you know, where we do have cars, obviously we'd like them all to be electric vehicles, but that's a little bit out of our control. So I guess we've homed in on the things we feel that we can actually really achieve. Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, great. So
and car clubs as well, with electric cars. That's another thing that will be great. Excellent.
There's a lot of support for cycle clubs, and especially for schools and parents, and for electric bikes. A lot of fans of electric bikes. I had one question, quite a controversial one for many people. Do you think pedestrianising the Steyning High Street on Saturdays would work? So we're not talking about every day, but maybe on Saturdays.
I think we should definitely give it a go. I'm talking to a lot of people about it. I think it is, and places where they have tried as well, and where they're trialing it, and actually loads of our big cities across the whole country now have huge pedestrianised areas. And I think one of the main concerns is, you know, will it be bad for business? And actually, there's lots of evidence to show that it's the very opposite. If you own a shop, you have a business in High Street, it's good for people socially as well. And there's no reason why it couldn't be done in a way that can still provide access for people who can't get so easily to the High Street. You know, it could be an area for disabled parking. The car parks could still be accessed, and we could maybe make the routes through into the High Street easier from the car parks. There's lots of different things to look at, but I definitely think it's worth trialing.
And one more question here. Have you looked at health walks and whether more options for less active people can be developed to gain confidence and promote health?
Yes, there's someone in our group who actually leads those walks. So yes, definitely. It's definitely something that's we've got in mind.
Excellent. Well, thank you ever so much, Dawn. And, you know, a lot of big projects in transport, an absolutely vital area. And if you want to know more, you're interested in getting involved, whether it be electric cars, whether it be cycling, walking, the 20's Plenty campaign, wait, you know, at the end, we'll give you details of how to find out more. So thank you. And now we're going to change tone and slightly go to something very interesting, which I've been looking forward to. And that is we're going to hear from 3 of our 4 candidates for the county council coming up in Bramber Castle. Unfortunately, Paul sends his apologies, won't be able to make it tonight. But we're going to hear from Simon Burstingle, hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly there, Simon, Mike Croker and Nick Hopkinson. So Simon, would you like to start? And the basic format here is each candidate has 2 minutes, and it's that exactly 2 minutes. We've got to be quite strict with time, and to really talk about what they think about Greening Steyning, what their views are on the environment. And so if you want to unmute Simon and join us. If you're there.
Thank you, Chair.
There you go. Hi. Good to see you.
Is the clock running?
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Is the clock running then? As a biologist, I studied climate change and its likely effects. And as a gardener, I've already started to experience them directly. My livelihood is under threat unless I find new ways of gardening for my customers. As a member of Greening Steyning's Biodiversity group, I see the power in working together to find solutions. The climate crisis is a global issue. We should all know about the dire warnings from experts and the short time left to make the necessary changes. So what can we do at county and local level? The effects of climate change are unpredictable. We need to make our county resilient with expert advice and a ring-fenced budget to support carbon reduction. It's a gesture to say the County Council will be carbon neutral by 2030. Why not say the whole of West Sussex will be carbon neutral by 2030? It's ambitious and risks failure, but I want West Sussex to be ambitious, to lead wherever it can by learning from what has been achieved elsewhere, being imaginative and creating and aiming high. We need to be a campaigning voice too. We need to rock the boat. The changes we all need to make for our civilization to survive to the end of this century are dramatic, and they will be unpopular, but properly managed, they could make our lives better. Quieter, slower roads, less noise, less pollution, working closer to home with the infrastructure to support it, a community spirit that is so evident here in our communities, and that sort of thing. We have no choice though. And as for me, the lawns may no longer be there for me to mow, but there will be growing things to look after so that people can enjoy their gardens. Beth Chatto is my guide with her dry Essex garden. She showed how we can rise to challenges that seem impossible when she took on a car park, but she made it into a beautiful garden with her imagination, creativity and leadership. Just think how much change you can implement with the right person representing you at County Hall.
Perfect, spot on 2 minutes. Well done, thank you ever so much. That's great fun. And Mike Croker from Green Party, if you'd like to go next.
Thank you, Paul. Right, so I've been a Bramber resident for some 40 years now. Got involved with Greening Steyning right back at the beginning. I very much remember the film. Thanks to Jeff and Sally for putting that on. It changed my life, I think. I've been a parish councillor for 6 years, district councillor for 2 years. If elected to West Sussex County Council, I think my main focus would be making sure that the climate emergency is actually at the forefront of thinking when any decision is made. As a subset to that, as those that know me, I'm quite interested in sustainable transport. So I'd be focusing on sustainable transport, be it making sure that the roads aren't full of potholes, which is, I mean, minor diversion, I think I've got time. Steyning Grammar School and the primary school, the road through Shootingfield is unbelievably difficult to cycle on because the blooming great cracks in it. Anyway, I divert. So making things better for sustainable transport in whatever form, be it local low traffic neighbourhoods, or school streets, i.e. temporary street closures. And finally, making sure that the buses continue to be subsidised. And I think it was, as was mentioned earlier, making sure that there's joined up thinking on the bus routes so that you can actually get from A to B without having to wait for an hour in between the two. That'll do. Thank you.
Perfect. 10 seconds are in your time. Excellent. And Nick Hopkinson from Liberal Democrats, if you'd like to unmute and start your 2 minutes, please.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Nick Hopkinson. I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate for Bramber Castle. Many thanks to Greening Steyning for organising this evening and for your many valued initiatives and projects. As part of the South East Climate Alliance pledge I signed, if elected, I hope to forge a close partnership with you to achieve area-wide targets, not least a 68% reduction on 1990 emission levels by 2030. About myself, I've lived in Steyning for 28 years and served as a director at Wiston House for 23 years, including a year as acting chief executive. Since retirement, I've served on both Steyning and Upper Beeding parish councils. If elected, I would press for a green post-COVID recovery, including ensuring award of council contracts are green and clean. I would oppose mean green budget cuts. For example, Liberal Democrats have solid green credentials, most recently preventing the closure of the Billingshurst tip. I would also progress the 20s Plenty campaign and provide for more cycling lanes for greener, safer streets, as said, and certainly support the continuation of bus subsidies. I would support initiatives for electric car public charging points in Steyning. I would press for divestment from fossil fuels in wherever the county council acts and at higher levels of government. And talking of higher levels of government, recognizing climate change is also fought through closer international cooperation, press the current Brexit government to rejoin the European Environment Agency. So I hope you may vote for me, Nick Hopkinson, so we can have a green, clean, caring and competent Liberal Democrat County Council.
Great, thank you all. Thank you all very much for that. That's much appreciated. And we won't take questions on this section, but we wanted to give people a chance to really listen to the candidates. So next, we're going to move on to really looking at our local businesses and local high street. And we're going to introduce John Griffin, who looks after communications for Greening Steyning and also represents Steyning and District Business Chamber, and Sarah Bowers from Steyning Bookshop, who many of you will know. So if you'd like to, perhaps John, if you want to join first, and you could tell us a little bit about why you first got involved in Greening Steyning and a little bit about, you know, the role that you see for small businesses and what we're doing.
Sure. So my background is that I grew up on a small backwater island in Essex, and my dad ran the boatyard, and sailing was really in my blood. And as part of sailing, it gives you a big appreciation of the environment and to observe and understand conditions. And it also makes you very self-sufficient. And I'm lucky, because of my passion, to have travelled widely with it. And while living in the Eastern Mediterranean in the early 2000s, I noticed kind of the impact of rubbish on some of the beautiful beaches out there, and how barren the sea was due to overfishing, and how it was affecting kind of natural wildlife. So development on the beaches and pollution going onto the beaches and into the seas was really affecting the rare animals out there, like sea turtles, from ingesting these things, and how light pollution from property development was actually affecting their nesting areas. And coming back to the UK, I came along to Green Drinks, where Surfers Against Sewage were giving a talk, And they were really addressing one of the sources of the pollution that ends up in the sea, which was the plastics, single-use plastics. And there was a lot of enthusiasm within the group that was there that evening. And so SAS had some really well put together resources and campaigns that we could use, which then helped us generate a real, wide community interest, especially with younger people, schools. We started getting parents talking about it because their children were becoming aware and speaking of the damage of waste, and becoming aware of the mantra of reduce and refuse, reuse, recycle. And as my business is in Steyning, and I'm an active member of the business chamber, it got raised on the agenda and was actively backed and promoted to the wider business community. And so that's really where it started with that plastic-free campaign. So we surveyed most of the high street, and all of those people pledged to make changes within their businesses. So, and it was really small stuff. It's, start small to make big differences. So as small as, not using single-use coffee cups, takeaway lunches, having actual crockery that could be washed up in the workplace, reviewing suppliers, and looking at things like recycling. And that's then been helped by the council starting to come on board and backing those initiatives. And I think just with then Greta and the climate strike happening, actually that's when the support went much wider, and it became a movement and a time for change and a time for action. And there's some really exciting projects that are planned now on the high street, including net zero and things like that. But I guess I'll leave Sarah to talk about things that they've been specifically involved with at the bookshop.
Excellent, thank you, John. And now let's hear from Sarah about what, it's been a very, very tough year for the high street, clearly, but perhaps you can tell us a bit about what's been happening in Steyning Bookshop and, what your involvement is in Greening Steyning.
Yes, yes, of course. It has indeed been a difficult year for the high street, but there have been some very positive things I think have come out of this whole year as well. As some of you may know, my husband Rob and I have been interested in environmental issues for many years. We've lived in Steyning for 42 years and we've had the bookshop for 37 years. And in the late 70s and early 80s in Steyning, fellow members of the Ada Valley Action for Peace and I set up a whole food co-op to source organically grown food, and then we started up the children's group, the Woodcraft Folk, whose whole ethos is to help children value their planet, and that group is still going strong. And in fact, we planted 250 trees with them on Sunday, actually, down but near the river on the in Ashurst at the Jessie's farm, who incidentally are hoping to rewild, but that's another story. And as in the shop, we've always tried very hard to keep our principles going with. We jumped on board very happily with the plastic-free initiative. It was great. We were always very uncomfortable about plastic bags. In fact, we tried to use recycled plastic bags. We tried to sell recycled wrapping paper and cards as much as we could. Things go in fashions, I'm afraid, and it's what is available and what the demand is. All businesses have to unfortunately pay attention to that as well, but we have tried our best, and we recycle our waste. We've recently installed LED lighting in the shop, and we're supporting Green Books, which is this fantastic new book club started by Joanna Knowles, which where each month a writer on green issues is interviewed, and we are supporting that by supplying the books if people want to have the books, and we're supplying them at a discount. But one of our important things, and I think this has been really important during this year as well, is trying to encourage people to shop locally. We've got a fantastic high street. We were thinking about the vision for 2030, as Dawn has been putting so eloquently. And someone said to me today, Steyning High Street is actually a good model in many ways already, because we have these small independent stores. We just need to continue improving it. We have different attitudes and towards the idea of maybe pedestrianising. The people who are keen on that, maybe they'd like to help us with our late night shopping event when we have to marshal the high street and direct traffic round the back of the high street to see what the issues are that we have to encounter then, and anger management as well, quite often. But that is a very interesting concept, and I don't want to be negative about it. It could well be a very beautiful thing to happen at some point in the future. But we need to make it so easy for independent shops to flourish. Cobblestone Walk is a very good example, because they nurture really small businesses which can attempt their model of what they want to do, and then maybe come out into the high street and have a bigger store. Our lovely health food store started off like that, and so that's really good. So we try our very best at the bookshop to do what we can to encourage others. We do Steyning in Bloom, filling the town with as many flowers as we can, and we've got a water butt behind the Steyning bus shelter for harvesting water. And we're looking forward very much to the repair centre that's going to come into Steyning, and also the zero waste part of the new budgeons that's coming.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. And, I think we're all very keen on supporting the high street and local business, and very much appreciated. Thank you very much to John and Farah. That's great. And now we're going to turn completely to a new area, but an incredibly important area, and one we can all identify with, which is our beautiful landscape and wildlife and biodiversity. And I'd like to introduce Ronnie Reid, who is coordinator for the biodiversity group. If you want to unmute, and everybody else mute, please. And if you can unmute, Ronnie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
There you go. Welcome. And so tell me, first of all, Ronnie, a little bit about a biodiversity group and what your vision is for 2030.
Oh, my vision for Steyning, Bramber and Beeding. I think I want to shake things up a bit here, actually. I have this vision of a community which has gone through a shift, a change in the way in which they view their relationship with the natural world, with nature around them. And gone is the need to control. We like to have this control over the natural world around us. And I see a community which has actually let go of the reins and let nature have its head a little bit more. Let her do what nature does best, which actually is to keep this planet turning. And they've given nature a bit more space and not just pushed her up into a corner somewhere where it's difficult for her to thrive. And I think of it as the community leaving the back gate open and allowing the wild things to creep in. And nobody has grabbed the pesticides or the weed killer or taken the strimmer out of the garden shed. And this has brought about an amazing change in what you can see if you walk around the area. Because we've released control and just let nature get on with it, there are new woodlands growing up. There are weeds creeping through the cracks in the pavements, and weeds are good for pollinators. There are areas of wild flowers which are really flourishing. Hedges which haven't been trimmed back but left to go wild. Great corridors for bats and barn owls hunting their prey. Wetland areas which are thriving. Everything really rich for nature and also rich for us. And that's my vision of the future.
Well, How do you think you're going to achieve this? Are there any particular projects that excite you and that you'd like to tell people about?
I think this is all about changing behaviour, and it's not an easy thing to do. You try convincing a farmer who's been growing food for the last 30 years that what he's doing is actually ruining the soil at his feet. Or you try and persuade a gardener whose roses are covered with aphid to just leave it, not reach for the pesticide, and the ladybirds will come along to sort the problem out. It's difficult. There's no quick fix with this, but I want Greening Steyning to play a role in changing what people do and what they think, and also the questions they ask themselves when they make lifestyle decisions. And I think there's lots of ways that we can do this. And I think probably the major way to do it is, in actual fact, to think about involvement, getting the whole community involved in what we're trying to achieve, getting them involved in the process of change. And where do you start with something like that? Well, perhaps we start by grabbing those who are already on board, in a way, those who are already interested in the subject. And people, perhaps there's a few in the audience who are already thinking, you know, what can I do to get us out of this awful crisis where we're losing so much of our wildlife? And one way you can bring them on board is to offer them chances to volunteer, to get involved in projects that actually improve biodiversity. And we've already got organisations around the area which are doing that. There's the Steyning Downland Scheme, there's the Sussex Community Orchard, who've been around for a while. There's some new groups, there's the Abbey Road Open Space Group, and we've got Steyning for Trees, which has embarked on this amazing programme of planting trees on every spare blade of grass in the area. And I think we ought to be working with these groups. I think we can improve their relations with that's not a very good way of putting it. I think we can draw new volunteers in for them. I think we can flag up what they're doing, get people interested in them. And I think we can also work together to run events, perhaps. I mean, last year we had a family bio blitz planned, and it was the Downland Scheme and the Community Orchard that were getting together to put this on. And unfortunately, COVID got in the way, and we never actually achieved our ambitions there. But there's hopefully, as things get back to normal, there's opportunities to do that. And I also think that every project that Greening Steyning initiates ought to be designed with volunteers in mind. And we want to bring people on board, whether it's in a practical way or whether it's people who are happy to take more responsibility. We want to draw them in with what we're doing. We also want to consult with people about what we're doing. We want to be able to be in a position where we can explain what we're doing and why we're doing it, to try and get people on board, to arouse their interest, and also to get their support and perhaps even their help as we go through things. We want to be there for individuals and groups of people who want to initiate change in the areas in which they live. If you're living on an estate, perhaps there's an area where you'd like to see rewilded. We're there to provide support, advice, that sort of thing. So sort of like a safety net for people who want to branch out on their own. And I also think we need to start lots of conversations with lots of different people, landowners, farmers, schools, our churches, families, gardeners, everybody and everything that we can get into contact with, to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, and get them on board with us.
No, that's great, Ronnie. I mean, your group, Biodiversity, is a very active group. We've got a lot of members, and we're going to be hearing from a couple more in a moment. And I think there's one thing everybody can agree in. We live in a truly beautiful place, which we should never take for granted. And in June and Green Books, we've actually got one of the top experts in Britain talking about the benefits of being in nature and gardening to our mental health and physical health, which is a huge growing area, one I'm slightly involved in as well. So that would be something to look out for too. So thank you so much, Ronnie, really appreciate that. And we'd now like to introduce, following on from that very closely, Laura Gossett is one of our newest members. And if you could join us and unmute, please.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm here.
And you're really here to
Hi, how
talk.
you doing?
Hi, very well, thanks. How are you? You good tonight? And you're going to really talk about why you joined Greening Steyning and perhaps follow on some of the things that Ronnie was talking about.
Yeah, well, so I was head of education for an international wildlife charity. I already get to work with schools, young people like Michael in the UK, around the world, promoting action to address biodiversity decline, which is actually completely intrinsically linked to climate change. They are not two separate subjects. But I joined Greening Steyning because I really wanted to make personal difference in my community. I wanted to do something at home. As you say, I've only been involved for a few months, but actually it's so amazing to see the dedication and commitment of everyone involved. It's sort of taken me from that level of anxiety to actually feeling like we're working together towards a shared goal. And I now get to work with Ronnie on the Life on the Verge project with some other volunteers, which is fantastic, bringing wildlife verges into the heart of our community. So both to increase the aesthetic beauty of what is already a very beautiful area, but also providing that much needed source of food for pollinators, which are vital to the ecosystem. And that's actually a project that people can start looking out for in the coming months in the community.
Brilliant, thank you. That's great. And we'd now like to hear from Elfie. If you're there, Elfie, and tell us a little bit more about your work with Ronnie and again, what you've got from really being part of Greening Steyning.
Hi, Paul. Yeah, well, I mean, I joined Greening Steyning. I've already been involved with the Steyning Downland scheme for 7 years, and I really wanted to help put my fundraising skills and my project management skills, I've worked with community groups, to use. And I thought, well, I should really get involved with Greening Steyning. And I think I've been really bowled over by the enthusiasm, the range of people, the skills. It really struck me what Dawn said earlier, that, you know, she came to it with, you know, not knowing about transport. Well, I came to this kind of having an okay view of wildlife gardening, but I found some brilliant online support. And now I'm kind of feeling really hopeful, actually, from all the conversations I've had with people on my street, with the people in the group, that actually we can really start to make a difference in our gardens. So from going from a place of quite negative emotions, you know, feeling that kind of burden every time I watched a programme about the climate, every time Greta Thunberg and David Attenborough popped up, I just started to feel like I just wanted to bury my head. But actually, you know, I think the more action you take, the more positive you feel about that you're doing something proactive, and you start to feel hopeful rather than worried and anxious. And so the area I'm working with, I'm in Ronnie's biodiversity group, and I'm leading up the wildlife gardening for Beeding, Bramber and Steyning. And so we want to try and encourage people to let maybe not all of their garden, but some of their garden go wild, so that they can have that space where wildlife can thrive, where it can forage, where it can find tasty morsels, where it can kind of come in and give it space. So we need to have ponds, we need to have wildlife areas, we need to have bushes and shrubs. What we don't need is fake grass, nothing except, you know, a wooden fence and some plastic planters. It's like, let nature in. And also we know it's good for our souls. So yeah, the wildlife gardening is my little bag. And if anybody wants to become a wildlife garden street ambassador, we'll be doing some plant swaps. We're going to be planning some hedgehog highways, where hopefully next year we'll be doing some nest box building. We've got lots of fun, exciting projects planned. So yeah, join in.
Thank you so much, Ev. That was wonderful.
And this is my wildlife garden. This is what I want it to look like behind me. Not really.
Few gardens.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we also just like to hear from Benedict Adam, if you're there, Benedict.
Oh yeah.
And why did you join Greening Steyning, and have you found it? If you can.
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
Yeah, I joined about just over a year ago now. I joined Greening Steyning because we're in a climate emergency, and I'm a father of young children. I fear greatly for their future. So, and not just their future, other children's future, and people that are facing the impact of climate emergency, at the moment. And kind of across the world, I was kind of seeing people weren't really acting as if it was an emergency. We kind of had the worst leaders elected at the worst possible time. Governments are setting distant targets, but everyone was kind of carrying on as usual, and it all felt a bit hopeless. But to try and find optimism and hope within this, and to try and influence change kind of from a grassroots level, I sought out my local environmental action group, which is Greening Steyning, and asked to get involved, really. And yeah, as sort of Elfie has said, I found that really inspiring, and everyone that was already there doing stuff is amazing. And it's kind of really helped to get involved in the various projects and actually start feeling like you're actively contributing something, and it really helps with the sort of worrying and sort of helplessness that some people might feel. So I would strongly encourage people to get involved to try and sort of feel that hope.
Brilliant. And I think that's a key point that you all made and other people have made tonight, that it can seem very daunting and overwhelming, and the best way to deal with anxiety about climate change is to go out and do something, and particularly to work with like-minded people. It really is the answer. So that's great, thank you. And now we're going to move over to our lifestyle group, and we're going to talk to Alex Marshall.
Hey, Paul.
Hi, how are you doing? And you're in Wales tonight, I believe.
I'm in very creaky rural Wales with very bad Wi-Fi, so apologies in advance.
No problem. Well, Alex, perhaps tell us a bit about your story and how you got interested in the environment, and particularly this group.
Sure. I mean, so for me, it probably started when we had kids. And I remember a particular conversation with my wife, and we were looking at, provisioning the household for children and all the things you need. And, we talk about nappies, and my background is procurement. And so I did my mental sums about how many nappies do children use and how long for. And I sort of saw this huge bill in my mind, and I thought there's got to be a different way. And a good friend of ours had been using cloth nappies. So we thought, let's give that a go. And to my surprise, not only was it actually quite a lot easier than we expected, it worked really well for us as a family. And it saved us a bit of money as well. And I think that was probably sort of the first in a series of small changes and small steps that we took as a family, so trying to stop using single-use plastic, traveling less, flying less, just making little incremental changes to be a bit more responsible. And, I think that's what it's all about. And what drew me to join Greening was to learn from others and to hear other ideas and to share ideas and sort of bring that into a community setting. And that's what sort of really excited me and enthused me to join Greening.
Brilliant. And is there a particular project, moving towards a vision for 2030, but it's particularly of interest for you?
Yes, I mean, so in the lifestyle group, so as I mentioned before, it's really about those small choices that we make every day and how we spend our money, how we live our lives, how we interact with the environment around us. And for me, I sort of view that through three lenses. So one is, we're trying to help people to save money, we're trying to help them to save the planet, and we're trying to help them to build community. And I think if we can do some of those things, all of those things, that's great, because different people have different ways into to greening. And for me, I really enjoy the fact that some of these choices that we make save us money and save the planet. And I think that's a real win-win. And so, with that in mind, for me, there's a whole load of great stuff going on in lifestyle, but I think the repair cafe concept is super exciting. So for those that maybe aren't familiar with it, the idea is if you've got something that's broken, rather than chucking it out, get in touch with the repair cafe, and there's a network of volunteers, people with skills and trades, so we've got electricians, mechanics, all sorts of useful people. And these folks are volunteering their time, and they'll work with you to fix that thing. And I just think it's fantastic, because not only is it saving you money, that's a product that's not going into landfill, But really importantly, there's this great community angle in there. You're getting to know people in your community and you're helping each other. And there's huge actual mental health benefits from the process of repairing and fixing. I've recently been through this process myself, trying to repair some old bikes from the garage. And it's just very enjoyable, very satisfying, and it ticks all of those boxes. And, you know, for me, there aren't that many projects that tick all three. Often you can sort of get maybe 2 out of 3, but the Repair Cafe is fantastic because, you know, it's saving money, saving the planet, and building community.
And when do you think it's going to open? Any best guess?
So it's going now, but sort of in a COVID safe mode. So it's all, you know, distance drop-offs and it's remote, so that the group, you know, is doing some great work. We've got a venue sorted, so I think we've got somewhere to host the cafe, but obviously we've had to be a little bit flexible in terms of when we come up and running. So we've got one eye on the lockdown calendar, but we're really hoping that over this summer we're going to be able to run it in person, because I think that again will be fantastic, because it will create this space for engagement and discussion. And what we want people to do is come, bring something, you know, sit with the guys and learn how to fix it yourself, because I think that's a much more engaging and interesting experience than just, you know, delivering it through a post box and getting back the working product. So I think if we can create that space for conversation and discussion, that'll be superb. So hopefully this summer, Paul.
Brilliant. Alex, thank you ever so much. And, you know, we have to change our lifestyle if we're going to hit that target of 50% reduction in emissions. So the work you're doing is very important. And now I'm delighted to introduce our local MP, Andrew Griffith, who's joined us. Andrew, as you know, is MP for Arundel and South Downs. What you might not know, he's also the UK's net zero business champion. And his role is to work very closely with the government to support UK businesses, and particularly working on the idea of net zero and promoting COP26, which is incredibly important, and we're going to be hearing more about that. So, Andrew, if you'd like to unmute and join us, and
thank you, Paul.
Well, welcome. And there is behind you is a perfect details of what we're doing.
Can you hear me okay?
We can, absolutely.
Fantastic, great. Well, look, it's been lovely to hear about everything you are doing this evening, and congratulations to everyone in Greening Steyning on Countdown 2030. I completely applaud and support that initiative. And if there's anything that I can do as your local Member of Parliament to give you practical support, we heard a lot from Dawn, for example, about transport in the area, and those are classic examples. What I found really empowering is this is a big topic, and it is, as I talked about, my day job, Paul. So we can talk about that in a little bit. But it's also something that depends on each and every one of us taking practical actions, and it is really intimidating. So the way that you are breaking it down into individual ways that people can get involved, whether it's, you know, the Repair Cafe. You know, one of the things that I've always thought we should be doing, even before it impacted on the climate crisis, is shopping local. You know, we have a wonderful food production in this country. We shouldn't be, you know, whizzing around the planet, bringing food from all sorts of exotic countries. Some of us remember, I'm a little older than most of you, but remember when food was seasonal. You know, and that sometimes you'd go to the supermarket and you wouldn't be able to get a particular type of fruit or vegetable because it didn't grow at that time of year. And we've bent out biodiversity far too much. So I think there's a lot of things that we can all individually do. And I'm super keen to help this group as well as other groups, because this is a really wonderful part of the country to live in. But we've got to protect our environment. It's under lots of threats. Isabella talked about some of those, and it feels like a constant fight. But you know, it's not a fight that we're not equal to winning. It's a fight that every one of us can make decisions and steps every day. And what you're doing is showing people and giving them the tools to do that. I mean, one of the things I love about your website is I'd love to do for every area is how green is your street? Because a lot of how you win this battle is giving people the tools and the information so that they can make smarter decisions. I think everybody's now on this journey. We've won the debate about should we be doing things to improve the local environment, but it's much more about the how. And the more that each and every one of you, whether it's just, when we're allowed to go back into pubs, talking to people, talking in the business chamber about the detailed things that you are doing, the more that all of us can mobilize to do it. And there's never been a more important time, as we know. And this is an incredibly important year with COP26 coming up.
Brilliant. And do you want to tell us a bit about COP26? Because I think a lot of people might have heard of it, but don't know about it, because obviously the pandemic and other news has dominated, and we've got it coming at the end of the year. So why should we really be taking note about this?
Well, John Kerry calls COP26, and I agree, the best last chance to save the planet. What COP26 is about is it's the Conference of Parties, and it's the 26th Conference of Parties. It's a UN body, so it's a UN event that the UK is hosting in Glasgow. As part of that, we are providing the Secretariat, so the UK government will be the presidency of COP, both in the run-up between now and November, but also for the important 2 years thereafter. And the success of that, there really hasn't been a very successful climate summit since Paris. The success of COP will be if we can mobilize the whole world to take action and make significant commitments compatible with limiting warning to no more than 1.5 degrees. That is our objective. The UK government's taken a world-leading position, offering to cut our carbon emissions by 70% against 1990 levels. We are actually well on the way to do that, but that's the most ambitious target of any leading nation. The reason that's important is not because of the UK emissions. We should do everything we can, but we're less than 1.7% of global emissions as a country. But we have this incredibly privileged position as G7 president. So with the G7 presidency right now, we hold the leadership of the Commonwealth, and we are host of COP26. So by our leadership, and that includes everything that each and every one of us are doing, we can leverage that across the other 98% of the planet where those emissions are coming from. The good news, as we know, is that Biden has marched the US straight back into the Paris Accords. For various geopolitical reasons, the Chinese have a real need to re-engage in global institutions after some of the things that have happened over the last 2 or 3 years. India, Brazil, Indonesia, all big emitting nations we're working with. And biodiversity is one of our particular, as a host country, you can add in your own particular topics, and biodiversity is something that UK is particularly championing. So there's loads to do, and there are only 26.5 weeks to do it in.
Absolutely. And what about your work as Net Zero Business Champion? How does that tie in with what we're doing and COP26? How does it all fit together?
It's exactly what you're doing, Paul, but it's doing it for the broader business community. Governments can make commitments, and they do, believe me. But the actual way that we deliver this, if you think about it, is really businesses and local authorities. That's where the emissions come from, and it's where the innovation will come from. If you look at how an economy is built up, it's built up of consumers, of businesses, and government spending. And so it's really, really important that businesses can take action. And just as you've been talking about, most of the things that businesses can do are really quite simple, particularly small businesses. I don't want this debate to be about elites. Yeah, they've got roles to play, but this is something that every single business on every single high street in Arundel and South Downs and across the country can take part in. So what you see behind me is the SME Climate Hub. That is live now. And I would urge anybody who's got a connection with a business to go and look at that. You can make your pledge. So you can commit to the pledge that's compatible with those targets that we need to hit, halving our global emissions by 2030. But it'll also give you some really practical ways of doing it, right? My best one I've come across so far is turning off your computers at night. Not everyone does that, but as we know, they just sit there sucking in power, sucking in energy, putting out a little bit of heat, but more importantly, that energy's had to be created from somewhere. So it's full of really basic things like that. And I think for that reason, it's empowering. The objective is to get hundreds of thousands of businesses across the UK. We've got 7.6 million. So it shouldn't be too hard to get many businesses. And I would personally love, Paul, if we had Steyning and Bramber be at the heart of that. I mean, wouldn't it be great to not just have a website saying we've got how green is your street, but actually to say Steyning High Street, the businesses there have signed up and we are the greenest high street in the UK. That would make me very proud.
That'd be fantastic. I think we'd all be on board for that. So that's really exciting, Andrew. Fantastic. Got a few questions to the audience. How will the government help local councils to lead their areas to meet the UK emissions targets? Any views on that?
Well, that's a big topic. The government's doing lots and lots of different things. I'll give you one example because we all have to work together a little bit. We talked about electric vehicle chargers. And you're doing really well. 16% I saw at the beginning in the survey, 16% electrical vehicle ownership, I think. That's high, but we've obviously got to get that a lot higher, and we'll get a lot of other benefits as well from that, such as air pollution and improving air quality. But we need more chargers. I think that's a point of agreement. The money for those chargers comes from central government, but it's the local authorities that have to deliver them. And so when we come to the practicalities of how we can build this low carbon living future, to be honest, we're all going to have to work together. The same with the built environment. There are lots of developers now that will build the homes that we need on a net zero carbon in use basis, and increasingly that will be net zero in construction. Some of them use modern methods of construction, new forms of material. There is a lot of technology that's coming that doesn't make the need for change go away, but it certainly makes it a lot more practical and a lot more accessible. But again, we're going to need planning authorities to make sure that any planning that happens is biodiverse friendly and net zero.
Brilliant. We've been talking about Repair Cafe and how important it is to repair things. We've got a question here. In France, it's illegal to manufacture something with inbuilt obsolescence. Will UK legislate this way?
Well, I really like the idea. I'd like to see a little bit more detail about the legislation. I mean, we've certainly for a long time had the WEEE regulations that mean that manufacturers have to take back their products and have to recycle them. Increasingly, businesses are being required to build their products so that each individual element is recyclable. If you ever go to what do we call it? The waste recycling centre, which is what it should be, you can see how hard it is because all of the different components are all mixed up and very hard to separate. One of the things that I'm really happy about, and I remember this from my childhood, so goodness me, it's taken a long time, is that we now have a plastic recycling tax on the statute book. So if you don't use recycled plastic, if you use virgin plastic, you will get additional tax on that. And that will change the whole supply chain for plastic recycling, which everyone can agree is just a horrible menace. So sometimes you do need some plastic. But in general, you want to use as much recycled as possible.
Brilliant. There are lots of questions, but here's a very important one. How does net zero actually work? Because I think one of the problems is there's a lot of these terms in the climate movement, yet they're not always clear what net zero actually is.
That is dead right. And one of the things as we try and, we've got to expand the journey as well. It's very dangerous if we all talk to each other, we all sort of get it. But if we're going to achieve the sort of change we need to keep the language really simple and really inclusive. And again, it was lovely to hear of people who've been involved only recently and been welcomed, because that's not always been the case of the environmental movement. Sorry, Paul, keep going.
No, I wasn't saying anything.
No.
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, next question. So what are the government doing to reinstate net zero planning requirements for new builds? I think it's a very important one.
It is important. Well, we've got the new Future Home Standard coming in 2025. You know, I guess that feels, I mean, it feels too long on one level, but then of course, you know, people are already starting to build homes that in some cases may not be finished by then. In many cases, people go above and beyond, and that's great. You know, we want to create the demand for people to live in a sustainable way.
Okay, brilliant. And I think what I'd like to know is, what advice would you give to people who are probably coming here for the first time, thinking about joining a group like ours, in terms of the big picture and what you've been talking about and what you've heard?
Oh, the biggest thing is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? We can all do something. It does get a bit intimidating, you know, what is my carbon footprint? You know, you can kind of work it out, but you have to be a little bit geeky. But we all know there are some really simple things. We've heard that a lot this evening, to be honest. You know, shopping locally, turning off taps and electric lights at night, maybe buying cheap sensors. There are lots of very simple things that we can all do. It's a macro problem, but the way you solve a macro problem is by taking a whole series of small steps. So I'd love to help where I can. The community take those small steps. There's an awful lot. There's a bit of a blizzard, if I'm honest, of sort of various forms of government support. And I spend quite a decent amount of time trying to help people navigate what's out there. This group itself got a grant from Horsham District Council. There are a number of grants out there. There are some specific schemes for cycling, for safe walking to school, for safer roads. And there's a lot of navigation to do, but the main message would be do something. Don't do nothing. Don't be passive. Don't be a witness. You know, actually do something and take some individual responsibility.
Brilliant. Sorry, one more question, which I think is a very important one. This is something we were involved in last year. What will government do to replace the Green Home Scheme with? You know, that's such a great idea, and for many reasons it didn't work, but perhaps you could update us on that.
Yeah, I can't give you an update right now, but there will be a replacement, and it will be newer and easier. It wasn't great, was it? Let's all be honest. We tried. I tried. I had a number of constituents who tried, and it was pushing. The good thing is it's absolutely pushing into the right direction, right? The aspiration of 600,000 every single year. The pot of money of 9.2 billion is still there. The money that was underspent has gone to local authorities. So it will still happen. It's just individual householders won't get that same money. It'll go to local authorities. They will do the same in their area. But what we need is something simple. If you think about what was the best bit of the COVID support schemes, you know, the best ones were the simple ones that worked at scale. And there were just too many different steps and not enough installers. You know, if you've got children, the best career going forward is to be a home energy consultant. The nation is not going to have enough of those for a very, very long time. And if we exhaust those, go and become an environmental planner, because all of the new schemes and development and builds that we're going to do are going to need more environmental planners as well, who are really literate in carbon neutrality.
In fact, green jobs generally are going to be one of the fastest growing employment markets for those of you with children or at college, children at college. It's a great area to go in. Andrew, you've been great. Thank you ever so much for joining us. And we really appreciate your help. And we'd love to work together to make our high street the greenest in Britain. That would be a wonderful thing to do. So thank you ever so much. And Jeff, if you'd like to rejoin me and we can have some closing thoughts. And thanks to everyone for staying with us. I know we've overrun a bit, but hopefully you feel it's worthwhile. So Jeff, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, well, thanks everybody for sticking with us, and thanks for all the speakers. But I've got a couple of slides to show, if I may. Let me just pull up. Where are we? Hold on a second. Here we go. The first one is looking at some of the, well, a lot of the partners and supporters who we're working with already. And if you look at all those organizations there, and I want to say this is a real, I think we could be, I'm really proud of actually how many organisations we've managed to connect up with, from all the way from the councils through to churches and schools and many other groups. And the big message, which we knew from the beginning, was that we can't do this alone. It's only going to work if we do it together. And it's been so encouraging how many organisations have actually agreed with us on that and have started to work with us. So if you're part of an organisation which is not mentioned here, but you think would like to team up with us, then do get in touch, because the more the better, I think, is the key message. Now, the second thing is just to flag up some upcoming events. We've got, these are the four things happening in the next month, starting this next weekend. On Saturday is the farmers market, and we'll be having the recycling bins there officially for the first time in quite a few months, and also the doll's house, which should be quite amusing. But on Sunday we've got the first of the year of our Give Your Stuff Away Day events, which most people will know about, where you put things out on outside your house for anybody else who wants them. But I really like to flag up the next Green Books on the 6th of May with Chris Goodall, who is a really inspirational author, talking about the kind of what we need to do basically to get on top of the climate crisis. And then the next Green Drinks event in May is, we've got a really great topic: how can we eat ourselves to a greener Steyning? So there will be links to all of these in the follow-up email that will be coming around shortly. So do sign up if you'd like to join us for these. And the last thing is, if you're not involved already, how can you get involved, and can we count you in? Now, the best way to do this is to either, to start by signing up to our newsletter, but you may like to also join one of our 4 action groups, which you heard about today. And the link at the bottom will allow you to do one or both of those. It goes to a little sign-up form, but I'll also send that round in the follow-up email. But we would really, really love to have some more talent in the group and some more person power in the group. And we really welcome you with open arms if you've got some time and would like to kind of get involved. Back to you, Paul.
Brilliant. Well, that's coming to an end now. So I hope you found tonight useful, hopefully engaging, inspiring. You've seen a very wide range of people, local people, just like you and I, who are really concerned about the future, but more importantly, are doing something about it. And we would love to have you join us. Jeff, if you want to put the link perhaps to Count Me In the chat, so people can, if they wish to, click on it straight away. And very soon we're going to be meeting face to face. We plan to have some walks. We plan to meet in pub gardens. Be a chance to meet the people you've met tonight if you're interested in biodiversity or transport or lifestyle or in homes and energy. You can contact us and we'll assign you to a group and you can meet people, and the many other people who you didn't hear from tonight, who are volunteers who've joined us. I think we're at the beginning of something very special. We've heard about the international scene, the national scene, the local scene. And this, for me, is the most important movement of our lifetime. And to be part of it is truly wonderful. So thank you very much for joining us. And I hope to meet you very soon. Thank you.